Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? It's Joe here from Spain Speaks with an update video today. We'll go through some of the main newspapers as we have been doing in recent times, see what is happening in the press here today in Spain. We'll go through El Mundo, El País, RTVE, the state broadcaster, El Confidencial. Then we'll have a look at some of the comments from yesterday's video and see what is happening in the comments section. Now we'll get straight into the news. We'll go to El Mundo, which is the paper that we normally look at first, and let's see what's happening. Now, the main news in El Mundo today is about Spain's rich list. Apparently, it has been published by this newspaper. And the main article they're going with here, Los más ricos, el virus se come 23.280 millones de euros. So the richest people in Spain, the virus has eaten up 23.28 billion euros of their wealth. And we can see the images of some of the richest people here in Spain, starting on the left with Amancio Ortega, the owner of the Inditex Group. Next to him we have Juan Roig, who is the owner of the Mercadona supermarket chain. Next to him we have Rafael del Pino, who is the owner of one of Spain's biggest construction companies, Ferrovial. Next to him, we have Amancio Ortega's daughter, who is probably the richest woman in Spain. Then we have a person called Sol de Orella, whose family owns the rights to Coca-Cola in this country. Next to her, we have a person called Mr. Entre Canales, who owns the Acciona company, and I don't know who that person is on the far right. So some of the richest people here in Spain having a fair bit of their wealth wiped out by the pandemic last year, especially when it comes to retail. Obviously, Mr. Amancio Ortega, one of the biggest retailers here in Spain, people couldn't go to the shops, so people couldn't buy his products. So if these people are losing money here in Spain, imagine the rest of us. Now we'll go back into the news and see if there's anything else that catches our attention. We'll click on this one here about Mr. Sanchez. Apparently he has admitted that he made mistakes last year. Let's click and see. And we can see the headline, Pedro Sánchez admite el error de la desescalada y pide evitar una cuarta ola. So the Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez admits they made errors with the de-escalation phase last year and is asking people to avoid a fourth wave of the pandemic here in Spain. So the Prime Minister finally admitting that he got things wrong last year, a little bit late in my opinion. What's the date today? The 24th of February, and the de-escalation phase last year, if I'm not mistaken, was in May, June, July. So a little bit late in my opinion to admit that you made a mistake, but at least he's admitting that they did make mistakes. What did they get wrong? Well, basically the Prime Minister has said that they did things too quickly. Remember that he also came out last year and said that we had defeated the virus, and a couple of the other premiers of autonomous communities said something similar. So people went out and did their thing thinking that we had defeated the virus, and obviously that wasn't the case because we had the second wave, then the third wave, and now they're asking us to avoid a possible fourth wave of the pandemic. Can it be done? Can we avoid a fourth wave? I don't know, time will tell, but as we can see, various autonomous communities are starting to ease restrictions. I saw that in some places yesterday they reopened bars and restaurants, and a couple of weeks ago they were telling us to avoid places like bars and restaurants because apparently they were high-risk areas, but as soon as the infection rate goes down, bars and restaurants open up again. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see another increase in infections over the next couple of weeks, but I hope that I am wrong. Now we'll go back into the news and click on this article about the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic here in Spain. And we can see this headline here about just how much small businesses are suffering at the moment. And the headline is, the prolongation of the crisis leads to 300,000 freelancers to propose the closure of their businesses. 2 out of every 3 autónomos or freelancers or self-employed people are currently subject to administrative restrictions on their activity, and 565,000 self-employed people have closed their businesses. So the pandemic has had a huge impact on this type of business here, on the self-employed. Something like 300,000 self-employed thinking about closing their business down, and 565,000, as we saw in the article, already gone. So a huge impact on the economy here in Spain, and especially this type of worker. But the good news is that the Prime Minister has announced an aid package today, something like 11 billion euros in aid for this type of worker, but I don't know whether it comes too late for some. Now we'll leave El Mundo and go to El País, see what's happening there. And the first thing that we are greeted with here is that announcement by the Prime Minister Sanchez, ayudas por 11,000 millones de euros para hostelería y turismo. So Mr. Sanchez has announced an €11 billion aid package for hostelry and tourism. The money will go to companies, SMEs and self-employed workers. So €11 billion in aid announced for this sector, the hostelry sector, the hotel sector, the tourism sector here in Spain. Is it enough? Is it too late? Those are some of the questions that we could ask. Now we'll scroll down and have a look at this article here about the Germans. Let's click on that one and see. And it is Los alemanes recelan de la vacuna de AstraZeneca. So Germans are suspicious of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The country has only administered 15% of the doses that the company has delivered because some people distrust its lower effectiveness. So there we go, some people in Germany not trusting the AstraZeneca vaccine because it is less effective than the other ones available, for example, the Pfizer vaccine. So what can I say? If they don't want those doses in Germany, send them down to Spain. Now we'll leave El País, go to El Confidencial, we'll scroll up past the ad and have a look at the health data. We can see that Madrid is the only place on mainland Spain now that is in that dark blue colour because they have an incidence rate of more than 300 cases per 100,000. We can see that there are various colours now. We've got a darker grey colour, we've got a lighter grey colour. For example, Extremadura, which had a very high incidence rate a few weeks ago, now down to 96 and now down to below 100. Murcia also doing quite well, down to 140. We'll have a look at the Balearic Islands. They're now down to 110, so the health situation definitely improving around the country. But we'll click on Madrid and just see where they are at. And they're still sitting at 362. So the situation in Madrid quite high when you compare it to other places around mainland Spain. And if we have a look at the graph on the right, we can see just how quickly the health situation has improved here in Spain. Now we'll scroll up and see if there's any more interesting news. There was an article here about the flu, so we'll click on that one and see what they're going on about. And the headline, Sin enfermos no hay vacuna efectiva contra la gripe. El inesperado problema del COVID. So without sick people, there is no effective vaccine against the flu. The unexpected problem of COVID. In Spain, only 7 cases of influenza viruses have been detected throughout the season, and the consequence is that there is no data on what the strains will be like next winter. So an interesting article there, only 7 recorded cases of the flu this year in Spain. And the article also says that all other respiratory infections this year have been wiped off the map completely this year in Spain. They're putting it down to mask wearing, social distancing, and all of the other measures that we have in place in order to stop the spread of COVID-19. But the downside, as we have just seen, is that there's going to be no effective vaccine against the flu, possibly for the end of 2021-2022. Now we'll leave El Confidencial, go to RTVE, the state broadcaster, see what's happening there. We can see Mr. Sanchez on the left, of course, announcing that new aid package, 11 billion, which we spoke about before. And we can see this article here about young people and the effect that the pandemic is having on their lives. So we'll click on that one. And the headline translates to the pandemic increases the number of young people who neither study nor work. And this person here saying that I have felt completely frustrated. So jóvenes que ni estudian ni trabajan. Otherwise known here in Spain as the ni generation, ni estudian ni trabajo. They don't study and they don't work, a lot of young people, and that leads to a lot of frustration with that generation. And we have seen that frustration being taken out in recent times. A lot of people are putting the riots in Barcelona and other cities around Spain down to this frustration that young people have. They can't get a job, they don't want to study, and that, as we saw, is leading to a lot of frustration. Now this is something about living in Spain that worries me. I have a young son, he's 10 at the moment, he's going to be 11 soon, and he's heading off into that future of uncertainty, and I don't want him to end up like a lot of young people in this country that don't work, that don't study, and don't have a lot of future prospects. High unemployment, very difficult to get a good job if you can get a job at all, and these are some of the problems that these younger generations are facing in this country. So is the situation going to improve by the time my son enters the labour market? I hope so. Otherwise, he's going to have to go to Australia to look for a job. Now we'll go into the comment section and see what's happening there. There were a few interesting comments on yesterday's video, so let's check some of those out. We'll have a look at this one here from Jim. Hi Stu, I've been following your channel for 6 months now, well done. In these depressing times, a bit of humour can lift our spirits. We are all familiar with British humour, but less so with that of Spain. Is there any chance of including some examples of the Spanish wit? Yeah, Jim, thanks for the comment, but to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Spanish humour. I don't find a lot of the comedians going around in this country very funny. There are a couple that I do enjoy. There's a guy called Joaquin Reyes that I find quite funny. He's on the radio. You can also see him on the television every now and again. And there's a few other people with a similar type of comedy to his that I find quite funny, but apart from that, I don't find a lot of people funny in this country. Maybe it's a language thing, maybe it's a social thing, I don't know, but if I want to have a good laugh, I normally listen to Australian comedians, British comedians, comedians from the US, or comedians in the English language in general. So we'll start the debate. Tell us who your favourite Spanish comedians are, whether you like Spanish humour, whether you find the humour here in Spain better than British humour or American humour or Australian humour. Let us know in the comment section below, and we'll see what some of the replies are. It's an interesting debate. We'll have a look at this one here from Wagner Elizabeth. When can we as EU citizens enter Spain to visit our houses again? Yeah, Wagner, thanks for the comment and good question. As far as I know, the borders to Spain are open from other EU countries except for Portugal. I think the border with Portugal is closed, so people from Portugal can't come to Spain at the moment, and people from Spain can't go to Portugal. But I think other European countries are allowed to visit Spain because, as I said, the borders are open. You just need to get a PCR test. And as we saw the other day, people from Paris and people from France in general are coming down to places like Madrid on holiday to enjoy the freedoms that we have here. So I think technically if you fly from another European Union country to Spain, in Alicante for example, and you have a house there, you are allowed to stay at your home. Another thing is being able to travel to another autonomous community or cross borders that may be closed. We, for example, here in Madrid can't travel anywhere at the moment. We can't go to Valencia, we can't go to Andalusia, but I think it's different if you're coming from a European country and you fly directly to that area. I don't think there's any restrictions, but I could be wrong, and if I am, please let me know in the comment section below, because I'm sure it's a question that a lot of people would like to know the answer to. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Don't forget to tell us if you like humour here in Spain or not, and who your favourite Spanish comedians are. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.